In this video, we're going to show you how to create the mezzanine floor detail view portion of Project 2 using the Drafting View tool on the View tab in the ribbon. So I'm going to go to the View tab first off and select that, and then come to Drafting View. And in here, I'm going to give this view a name. I'm going to call it Mezzanine Floor Detail. And if you look at the drawing handout, it's to be a scale of 1 inch equals a foot. When I create a drafting view, it's as if I am going in a two-dimensional drawing editor. And in here I can use lines and tools that relate to two-dimensional objects. Most of those exist on the Annotate tab. So I'm going to go to the Annotate tab up in the ribbon, and I'm going to begin by creating the masonry block wall. That masonry block wall is a repeating detail component that sits underneath the component tool. So I'm going to select repeating detail, make sure in my type selector that it's CMU, and it's as simple as picking 2 points to create a representation of the wall. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw a few of the blocks out here. Once I've created the concrete masonry unit block wall, I'm going to add the ledger board to it. That ledger board tool is an actual detail component itself, not the repeating detail. So I'm going to go back to my component tool, pick detail component at this time, and then say load family. And inside the Imperial library, I'm going to find a folder called Detail Items. Inside the Detail Items folder, you'll see that it's laid out differently than what we've seen in the past, but it's categorized in what's called CSI master format in divisions. And if I'm going to do a ledger board, that is a wood member, so it will be Division 6, wood and plastic. Then we'll go to wood framing, and we will go into the nominal cut lumber in section. And if I look at that detail to recreate it, it's going to be using a 3x12. So I'm going to select the 3x12 option here and say OK. And now I have a 3x12 in section that I can then add to my detail view. After that, I need a way to anchor that ledger board to my masonry block wall. So I'm going to come back into loading the family and load up some anchor bolts. Again, it's the Detail Items folder. Anchor bolts are found in the Division 5 Metals area. Common work results for metals, metal fastening, and I will be choosing the anchor bolt from the side option, family here, and then hit open. Now if I reference the detail again, that anchor bolt from the side is supposed to be a 3/4 inch diameter anchor bolt by 8 inches long. So in my properties, I'm going to go and change in my type selector to a 3/4 inch bolt. By using the space bar, I can rotate that bolt around, and then I can place it. Once it's placed, if I select that bolt, I can change its length now to be 8 inches in the properties and apply that. Now when we're working with drafting views, all of the same editing types of tools that we've learned to this point apply here. So if I want to select that item and nudge it with my nudge keys, I can do that. If I want to use a line tool, I can use my align tool to align that washer with the face of my ledger board. I can also use temporary dimensions to locate it the exact location that it should be. Here's a copy tool to copy the second one down 6 inches from the first. And there we have our ledger board attached to the masonry block wall with anchor bolts. After I get the anchor bolts in, I'm going to create the joist, and that is a component as well. So I come back here again on the Annotate tab to the Component tool and say Load Family, Detail Items. The joist is a wood member, so it'll be Division 6, wood and plastic. They're fabricated in shop, so I'm going to go to a Shop Fabricated Structural Wood folder and choose the wood I-joist from the side. The I-joist that we're to use is a 3.5 by 11 7/8, so I'll select that as the option. And then a joist is just as simple as drawing a line and picking 2 points. So I'll pick right here and just take that out a few feet to approximately there. You also notice when this occurs that the head of the anchor bolt has now been hidden by the joist that we just added. Well, much like other software packages where you're dealing with images, you can play around with what is called the draw order of things. So if I select that joist that I just added, I can say I want to send that joist to the back, which will move it behind my anchor bolts, and they'll be visible again. After we put the joist in, we're going to add a joist hanger. Now there is a joist hanger component that we could load up, but I'm going to show you how to use the region tool as part of this step. The region tool sits next to the component tool, and it's in this tool where we can create what are called filled regions or patterned areas, or even masked regions if we want to mask off an area. We're going to use a filled region, so I'm going to select that option. Notice in my ribbon I get the draw tools, then I can just draw whatever shape I want to create a filled region. For this shape, I'm going to start here at the top of my ledger, just go down to the bottom of my floor joist and come out about 4 inches, show it angled back up to the top of my joist and just close it off. And that will be the boundary shape for the symbol that represents a joist hanger. That is typically made out of steel, so I'm going to change the pattern that it fills with from diagonal crosshatch to one that represents steel. And I'll say edit the type, duplicate, give it a new name, say OK there, and then under the fill pattern, or in the fill pattern area, I'm going to select that field and that little button next to it, which will take me to a library of fill patterns, and scroll down and find steel and then say OK. What this does is loaded in a new and created a new fill pattern that uses the steel, the symbol for steel. Then once that's completed, I will select the green check mark to accept those changes, and I will have a symbol, a filled pattern region that symbolizes a joist hanger. Again, there's a draw order thing happening here where I will need to bring my anchor bolts forward. So I'll select those and say bring to the front to have them in front of, and I may bring that forward one level so I get a look like that. Once I have my joist hanger completed, I can add the metal decking on top of that. That is a repeating detail that we use, very similar to what we did with the concrete block wall. If I choose the repeating detail component underneath the component tool, and in the type selector change to metal deck, the metal deck size that we're using is 1.5 inches thick by default. So I'm going to come up here using my temporary dimensions and see about where it says 1.5 inches, pick a start, and it's just picking 2 points. It's okay if it overhangs your floor joist there a little bit. We're going to clean that up later. But now we have metal deck sitting on top of our joist system. Next we'll add a concrete topping, and you could add a concrete topping using the filled region tool with a concrete pattern if you wish. The easiest way to do it would be to come to your detail component tool again load family, detail items, go to Division 3 concrete, and there's a folder right here called concrete topping, and load the concrete topping slabs in section family. Then I'm going to choose a 4-inch thick concrete topping, be right here, and just draw a line again, picking 2 points that will show and depict a concrete topping. If you want to play with the draw order of that decking again, you can select that deck, bring it to the front so that you get a look more of it's filled in. So there we've got our decking and our concrete topping slab. Next thing we're going to do is add some reinforcement bars to the concrete block wall. Those are components again, so I'll use my detail component tool, load family, detail items, and you would think because rebar is steel that it would be in the metals folder, but we typically put rebar in concrete, so it's actually in Division 3 concrete folder, reinforcing steel, and I'm going to grab some reinforcing bar in section here and load that family up. If you reference your detail, your handout, you'll see that that's number 5 bar. So I'm going to choose number 5 bar, and we're going to place that bar right there. These anchor bolts would typically get tied off to some rebar passing through the block, and then the spacing on those is 16 inches on center, so we're going to add one approximately in that block there and in that block here. And we have our rebar depicted. Next thing I'm going to do is there's different ways to depict rebar in vertical or configuration. So I can go in and load a component to do it, but I'm going to show you how to just add it just doing a normal line that's drawn in there. So I'm going to use the detail line tool for that. Change the line style. So up here in the ribbon I'm going to go to line style and just choose hidden lines. And then I'm going to show just a hidden line type drawn up the center of the block, which can represent my vertical rebar in this detail. Often when we have details, we want to clean them up and look like they're taken as a chunk out of a view. And so I'm going to add what's called a break line to this detail. It's a detail component as well. Over here in my type selector, I'll scroll upward and find break line. A break line has a masked region behind it, and you can tell where the mask is by where the temporary dimensions are shown. So I can place that break symbol right there and it will mask out an area behind it. If I hit my space bar, it can rotate around and will mask there, and space bar again and mask here. And then if I select these, I can drag that masked area out to cover up and clean up my detail view. That finishes up all the parts and pieces that we would need to actually create the view itself. The remaining things would be to add the text and dimensions to the detail.